Please welcome two-time Oscar nominee, Cynthia Erivo. Welcome, welcome. Just take it all in, everybody. Take it all in.
Hello. Thank you.
I have 6 minutes to talk to you. I'm just going to stare at the dress.
Well, here we go. Let me give it.
It's phenomenal. Cynthia, I mean, this movie, Harriet, is so important for many reasons because it's teaching the entire world things that we should have already known about Harriet Tubman. When I was watching it and afterwards thinking about you, I wondered, is Harriet Tubman taught in the British school system?
So I only recently found out that not every school in the UK learnt about Harriet, but I was lucky enough to learn a little bit about her at my school, which I'm really, really pleased to have known, because she was probably like my first hero. In my history book, she was probably the only woman of colour to be spoken about. So she was just a huge inspiration. Yeah.
Did the thought ever cross your mind that you might embody her in some way, shape, or form, whether on stage or on screen?
In my history class?
Yeah, no, just or in the last 5 or 10 years as you've been acting.
I don't know. I don't think so. I didn't know that would happen at all. I don't think it was. I don't think that I thought that I would be the person to be picked to do something like that. Yeah.
One thing that I've learned about you is that, and it makes total sense when we learn about you in your actual life, that the costuming of a character is extremely important to you.
Yes, very much so.
How much input did you have, and how important was all of the processes that went into choosing and fitting Harriet's wardrobe?
So Paul Tazwell, who is amazing, he was the costume designer. He had this wonderful way of making sure that everybody was included in the making of their character. So we would speak about the colors that he would use, the materials, the fabrics. That very last one that you saw went through a couple of changes because I felt like it needed something that felt heroic. I wanted it to be the last image that you saw of her in that way. And he was always open to suggestion. Whatever made the story come through is where he was happy to be, yeah.
Is there a day of shooting this film that you recall as being particularly grueling? I mean, there are scenes where you're like shoulder deep in cold water. I mean, what stands out as being the roughest?
I mean, you picked the one.
Oh, really?
You picked it. It was 27 degrees. Yeah. And I was in that water. That was cold, yeah, middle of the night, and it was cold. That was particularly grueling. I remember I think everyone else was petrified, and I, being a glutton for punishment, decided not to wear a wetsuit underneath the clothing because I felt like it would get in the way of like moving, and I felt like because I don't know why, I end up doing a lot of things in water. The last film I did made me be, like, I was in water, like, pouring rain for 14 days, and they also wanted me to wear a wetsuit, and when I did, the water would get trapped in the wetsuit, which made me colder. So I was like, I'm not gonna do that, I'm just gonna brave it.
If you had to do it again, what would you have done?
I'd do the same. I think because, the fact is, it didn't really matter how grueling it was because it was never going to be as grueling as it was for her. So I was always going to be like, okay, this might be hard, but it's never going to be as hard as what she had to go through. So at least I have some semblance of what she was doing. Yeah.
As someone who is such a fan of your singing voice and of your performance on Broadway in The Color Purple, which just slayed me, when I went into the film Harriet, because I saw it a month before it premiered at Toronto, I didn't know that Harriet Tubman sang.
Yes,
so when all of a sudden you started singing, it was the same way with the El Royale movie you did, where you started singing, and I was like, hallelujah. But Harriet's singing voice is different from your singing voice. How would you compare and contrast the two?
I would say hers is more pure because it wasn't about performance for her. It really was about communication. The idea was that this was the safest way to communicate whatever she was needing to tell people. If she would use certain verses to tell people it was safe to come and meet her, that it was time to run, that it wasn't safe just yet, but it would be soon. And in the scene you see her sing the first time, it's the way she said goodbye. It needed to be something that felt immediate and pure, non-performative, just communication, pure communication as well as you could get it, because that was the only way you could back then.
It's been so fun to watch you go through this whole season, and you've gotten the chance to do so many fascinating things and performances. I was really mesmerized at the Kennedy Center honors,
Yes.
where they cut to you in the audience during the Sesame Street.
Oh my God.
And you were really moved
Bawling.
Why?
I don't know. So I guess, I think there's something so endearing about the stories that Sesame Street would tell. It included everybody. No one was excluded from something like Sesame Street. So when I was watching the montage of the things that went by, it just made me feel like a kid again. I felt like these people really wanted to include all the children in the world. No one was different, no one was apart. Yeah.
And then finally, as I mentioned, you not only have your Academy Award nomination for Best Actress, but also for Best Original Song for the song that we heard. It's called Stand Up. Was that Casey Lemons, the director, coming to you and saying, I have an idea, or was it you saying, hey, I also want to sing a track?
It was me. It's always me. I'm a glutton for... I like working hard. The fact is that I knew that I felt like I might have something to offer because I had been a part of the storytelling, and I thought that perhaps my voice and maybe some of my writing could make something special for this particular film, and they just let me go with it, really. Yeah.
Thank God they did. And thank God you stood up for yourself
Thank you.
on that front. Ladies and gentlemen, Cynthia Erivo. Hang out there for a second. All right, next up, we have another Academy Award nominee this year, Florence Pugh, who was phenomenal in 2 films this year, Midsummer, but let's take a look at a clip from her in Little Women.